Order. Our first order of business, approval of the minutes.
I just have one modification. I think I made quite a statement about people that write in for variance, for either disapproval of something, that we at least send them an official letter or an email saying we reviewed it and here's the reason why it was granted. And I think I made that real clear at the last meeting, but I don't see anything in the minutes about it.
That's right, we're not gonna do that. Well, this meeting is here and recorded and part of the city's record, so your adjustments are here and available online for anyone to go see. We can't respond to everyone that sends a comment. We have hundreds of cases. So if that's something we wanna do, I'd recommend talking to the city council when it's time for budget. Not only have we don't have the money.
Well, I don't think
postage.
it would be too much trouble
Oh, it is.
to just do it for the people that we approve. We only approve, what, maybe 15 or 20 items a year?
You do it for this board, you have to do it for planning commission, you have to do it for
Why?
council cases.
You don't have to do it for, they ain't getting it now.
I'm not
The only
following.
person that I think needs it is our citizens. We need our citizens to participate, and we're not getting it. I don't
Are you
think.
talking about after the fact? Because we do send a letter before.
I know that.
Okay.
And they send in a reply, and I think it's kind of, I don't think it's real polite not to respond to them.
Okay,
Just with a brief note. You don't have to make it anything really big.
I do respond to everybody that emails a letter in. I send an email that says, I received your comments and that they'll be provided to you, which tonight I'm going to tell you about 3 of them that I
Okay.
received that came in
And I
after.
think that was explained last month.
Is he
as well.
talking about a
And I
comment or a
understood that.
variance?
That's not the answer. The answer is, this citizen took time to go out and look at the situation. He got your letter, obviously telling them that this was gonna happen in his neighborhood. He sits down, takes time to write this letter, and then you sent him a letter saying, we received your letter. Well, that's nice, but he doesn't know what happened. Other than he has to get back on and look something up. Couldn't it be just as polite to jot a note to him?
Dick, this is the way I'll look at it. They took the time and effort to write a letter in opposition or for any of our items. And if they would take that time and effort, they could either get online and watch the outcome or come to this meeting. You're saying that we want citizen participation. Well, it is citizen participation if they come to the meeting.
Well, it is citizens' participation if they go to the trouble of going seeing
Well,
what the issue is and then
I'll
send a letter.
I suggest you go to the city council and propose what you're proposing.
I don't think I have to. This is a meeting of an official organization. What are we called again?
Then I recommend if you want to, for the board, have a vote. If it's a majority wants to do that, we can see what it would entail. I'm not promising we can do that, but that potentially may be an option.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Any other comments on the the minutes of last week?
No.
You'll hear a motion to accept them as stated.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Okay, our first order of business is BOA case 20.06 for 22585 Main Street.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Carla Davis, and I'm here to present the Board of Adjustment Accessory Structure Setback Variance, case BOA 20.06, 22585 Main Street, today on June 15th, 2020. Here we have a zoning map to your left and the area map to your right, and then find the subject site. The applicant submitted imagery in the packet. It's not extremely clear here, but you can see at the top portion, there's a previous existing condition where the gazebo was present, and then at the bottom, you have the current existing condition where they've added a boathouse. The applicant's request. The subject property is located at 22585 Main Street and is zoned R1, low density single family residential. The property is located along Mobile Bay and thus is considered a waterfront lot. An amendment was made to the zoning ordinance on June 10, 2019, which was ordinance number 1652, that defines a waterfront lot as any lot or parcel adjacent to Mobile Bay. The applicant has constructed a new boathouse and pier, what is now considered to be within the front yard setbacks, which is not allowed. Thus, the applicant is requesting an accessory structure setback variance. Comments. Prior to new construction of the boathouse and the ordinance amendment, the applicant had a gazebo/pier house on the property that met the rear and side yard setback requirements, which was shown in the top imagery of the top plan. New construction and renovations took place without permits after the zoning amendment was adopted, which now places the boathouse and pier house within the 40-foot front yard setback. The applicant is now asking the board to allow the structure to be located within the 40-foot front yard setback on his waterfront lot. The applicant states that there are many other properties along the bluff that have similar structures within what is now their front yard. Staff is aware that similar lots within the surrounding area also have structures located along the waterfront, and thus approval of this request would not seem out of character with the uniqueness of the surrounding area. Thus, staff recommends approval of an accessory structure to be placed within the required 40-foot front yard setback at 22585 Main Street. Are there any questions?
Is the boathouse and gazebo the one to the right as you're going down the driveway? All the way, almost next to the home, or?
It's in the rear portion. I just put, if you wanted to see, I don't know if you can probably see, but I don't know if these clicker works, but
It's adjacent to the water, so you
Right.
can't see this from the road.
Oh, I see, okay.
Close on the water side.
right.
And it's not quite a boathouse, it's the beginning of the pier. So the
I got it.
boat storage is in the water. This is within the lot, which if it was in the water, we wouldn't be here to review. That's not our jurisdiction.
Well, the mistake that I made was going down there, looks like there's a boathouse right next to where this property is, but it looks like it's on the other side of the marker or the lot line. And I just assumed that was it. And, I looked out there and I said, my God, this is an enormous place. You can't see this from the road, can you? I don't know. This can't be seen from the road. This is behind the house. And to give a little bit of background information on this, and something I'm going to ask the Board of Adjustments, a little over a year ago, the Planning Commission changed the zoning code. So for years, bayfront lots were just like every other lot. The front was on the roadside. And I think there was a lot of variance requests and other things for building a garage on the roadside, which is the front yard. So that became so common that they changed the definitions of bayfront lots. So the front is on the bay side of the house, street is on the street side, or the rear is on the street side. So the garages work. What we didn't do as staff and planning commission is address these times when it makes sense. It's not a boathouse, but it's a accessory structure down by the water to supplement, the boating activities and kind of being down the hill in a lot of these lots. And then also things like pool houses that, people may want on the
the bay side of the house.
So that would also include like outdoor kitchens?
Outdoor kitchens, any accessory structure. So we're now allowing those people to put those in the front yard. We didn't address that, and we kind of have two options moving forward, and would just like your opinion. We can bring every one of those to Board of Adjustment, or if we see the need to amend the zoning code, we can go to Planning Commission with that request to allow in certain conditions, pools, gazebos, pool houses, something along this line. Just put that in, it's very specific, only lots that front Mobile Bay is a bayfront lot. So not the creeks, not any other waterfront lots. So if that's something you have any feedback on, we'll be happy to take that and amend our zoning code so we don't see these replicated. I think it is a unique enough situation that we can handle that via zoning code amendments. But if you would like to see those, every one of those, we'll be happy to bring those to Board of Adjustments as it's written right now.
Sounds to me that in all my life growing up on the water, the front's always been on the water side. But most people that buy on the waterfront would probably consider the roadside being the front. And I could see the confusion rather than bringing it, my opinion is, rather than bringing it to the board every time, just go ahead and make the correct adjustment for it's in writing. People, when they inquire or get a building permit or whatever, there's a documentation that says this hanging someone out and postponing their plans of doing something. Let's go ahead and change it.
Everybody else?
I agree with that.
Great, yes.
Kathy, do you have an opinion?
I thought it was already in writing that the bay was the front.
It is, we just didn't address the accessory structures, and we can handle that. It'll just be a little supplement to our code that can handle some of the, it won't fix every problem, but,
Okay.
it will prevent a lot of these issues.
Uh-huh.
And this was built without a building permit, and ironically, if it was permitted, it might have hit before we changed the amendment. So we're in a situation now that we just have to bring this to you, and we can go fix our omission in the zoning code.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd like the applicant to speak for or against it, if the applicant is here. If you'll state your name and address for us.
Yes, sir. My name is William Dorgan at 22585 Main Street. So I guess you know what I'm applying for is a variance to relocate this, to allow me to have this structure here, which is a pier house, a part of the pier and the boathouse. The boathouse is out in the water, and this is leading to that. It's down the 70-foot cliff, and it's located basically on the beach area. So it's a pier house on the beach, connected to the pier. So it's all connected together.
All right. Was there any question from the staff? Or
I have one to the staff. If we change, let's assume we change the zoning like you're talking about, would this comply with the new zoning?
Yes, we would, this is what we envision by allowing, what I think you'll see common before we made that zoning change. So yes,
Right,
this will
right.
fall right in line with that.
Okay. I just want to make sure about that.
Sure. If this was a year ago, we would have looked at this as the rear yard, and they can, basically any of those lots can build up to 25% of the rear yard, which this doesn't come close to that. We're at a very.
Within 5 feet of
very
the
deep
property.
lot. Right. So that we're not exceeding any of those. There's not a dimensional variance of any kind. It's just that what's the front and rear.
Okay.
I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
Anil.
yes.
I guess I would like to ask Mr. Dorgan why he or the builders never applied for a building permit.
Well, it was my understanding that because it was a pier, that it wasn't required to have a permit. It wasn't in the jurisdiction of the city of Fairhope, was my understanding, as well as my pier builder's understanding.
And I can supplement that, just to clarify, there was also construction at the home, and there was a permit there. So I think was this tied to a boathouse, which once you get out of our property and out of our jurisdiction, does not require a permit. And Eric Cortinas is here. He can chime in and correct me at any point in time. So this one did just kind of slip through the cracks, I think. I don't think there was any malice. But when we found out, we kind of been studying this. There's been quite some time that we required a flood survey certificate to make sure this was actually built out of the flood zone before we'd actually bring it here, because that would have had to be remedied as well. So we've put Mr. Dorgan through made him jump through a couple of hoops, and we're here now.
Because if it's a pier, it's not required to have a permit by the city, right?
Usually
Because that's-
once it gets into the water, that's a state land issue. ADM is going to be looking at those, and it becomes out of our jurisdiction. It's off the lot. This part is built on the beach, on the land that is within the lot within our jurisdiction.
Did you have a state lands permit and a Corps engineer's permit?
Yes, sir, we have all those permits through the pier builder. I might make note, too, that, one of my understandings was because the city inspector was there doing inspection on the renovation that we're doing on our main house up on the bluff, and we invited him to come down and just look at it and kind of give us some advice and suggestions as to making sure we're doing everything correctly. He said, "No, thank you. I have no jurisdiction down there." So, just based on that, I was presuming and assuming, it was just my understanding that, boathouses and piers and pier houses are never required within the city limits. I understand within the city limits, and I understand, front yard and backyard. But like you say, I've always assumed or always recognized and viewed the bayfront as the front yard. It's a bayfront. It don't have a backyard, if you will. It's got two fronts, street front and a bayfront, so.
All right, well, thank you.
sir.
This time, I'd like to open the public portion of it. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against? If you'll please state your name and address for us.
Sir, I'm Catherine Kusa. I'm 22563 Main
If you
Street.
can make sure to speak into the microphone so it can pick it up. Yes.
Catherine Kusa. Can you hear me now?
We can.
I can talk really loud. I'm at 22563 Main Street, directly next door to Mr. Dorgan's place. And there's just a couple of things I have to ask. Number one, when y'all do send out your letters, it would be nice if you put a little bit more detail, because this didn't say anything to me. It just said he was asking for a variance. So then I paid a visit to Ms. Boyette Friday to try to get more detail, and then did get all the additional detail. I have a couple of questions. Number one is, if you had that ordinance in June of 2019 and you don't adhere to it now, anybody else can just say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We won't comply with the ordinance either." Second of all, you did have a he had a contractor. Obviously, they didn't have the right information, and yet when the construction was halted is when this variance became required, correct? How often did the building inspectors go out? I mean, Eric knows, I think I came and saw you right at the beginning. Because this is just I've just had multiple issues with the whole construction process over there, but I'm going to focus on down at the beach. Number one, what are they planning to do with the building? It's not a boathouse. It is a house down there that has hot and cold running water, or at least they have hot and cold water lines going to the structure, right? Are they going to have sewage? I have grandchildren that go down there and play at the beach, swim in that water. And we know Mobile Bay is not the cleanest anyway. It's a little scary sometimes. But Are they gonna have sewer down there? Are you gonna have a grinder pump and a lift station? Because like he said, he is 50, 70 feet up, so am I. I mean, he stripped the bluff of all vegetation. Now he's having to put in a fancy retaining wall. But there's just so many things that, you know, if we give into this, the way I look at it, what's next? And that's really, I mean, I'm scared of erosion. I guess I shouldn't worry about it because if a Hurricane Ivan or a Hurricane Katrina comes along, it's not going to be there anyway. But it is directly on the beach. It's not a boathouse. It is a housing structure. It's not a gazebo. And if you look up and down the bay, north or south, unless it was there since I was a kid in the 1950s, because this is my grandmother's property, there is no other structure like that from Fly Creek to Rock Creek or beyond, as far as I can see and walk, and as far as I can see when I'm out in the bay. So that's just not even a true statement, and that bothers me too. I mean, if you're going to apply, you probably already made up your minds, but I just am registering my complaint, right?
Thank you.
So thank y'all.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for or against?
I would like to tell you that I did receive one other letter in opposition from Ashley Jones. She just stated she was in opposition, but then I also received a phone call from a resident on San Souci who said they were in favor of it.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Eric Cortinas, building official for the city of Fairhope. I'm not here to speak for or against. I want to kind of give you the timeline and the logistics of what happened. Mr. Dorgan applied for and was issued a building permit for renovation of the house. And our inspectors perform periodic inspections when his contractor called for those inspections. At one of those inspections, they look down on, because as you mentioned, the lot is extremely deep and there's a bluff that goes down to the beachfront area. The city's jurisdiction goes all the way to the water line. We handle anything, including bulkheads, anything like that coming in from the water line. When you get over the water line, you're now under submerged state lands, and that becomes a state lands issue. So we don't issue permits for piers or boathouses over the water unless there's associated electrical and plumbing. So this building falls under the city's jurisdiction. Our inspectors came back, brought it to my attention. We went out and took a look at it. The reason we are here now is we have a building that is on the beach, on their property within the city jurisdiction, that is in a high velocity flood zone. It is enclosed, it's heated and cooled, and it has electrical. Now that in and of itself, we can look at from a building standpoint. There was an application for a lift to come down the bluff from the upper side to be able to access this building. I denied issuing that building permit and turned it over to the planning department, because the first thing we have to decide is the building legal where it's located? And that is a city zoning issue. So we issued stop work order on the building itself, and we did not issue the permit for the lift until this issue is decided per the zoning ordinance. Can the building stay there? If that is decided in the affirmative and they can have the building there, then we will come back and we will look at it from a federal floodplain regulation standpoint and from an electrical, plumbing, and structural standpoint from the building code. But the very first thing we have to decide is, can the building be there? That's under the purview of this board. So if you decide to allow it or not, if you decide to allow it, that's fine. Then it comes back to us, and we will then engage the builder who built it, and we will require elevation certificates and other information, which I think we may have an elevation certificate. So we need to look at that, and then we'll have to inspect it for structure, because we're in a high velocity flood zone, a bayfront coastal flood zone. Then we'll also look at it from an electrical and plumbing standpoint per her concern, because they will have to, if they have plumbing, and I believe it has bathrooms in it, they'll have to have a grinder pump, they'll have to be able to pump up, and then the electrical that runs that system will have to be elevated above the flood line, and then it just becomes a permitting issue. But just so you kind of understand the timeline and the process of how we got here.
And to reiterate, if this was done 18 months ago, this would have been, from a zoning standpoint only, would have been okay. And there are multiple accessory structures. There may not be one that mirrors this exactly, but there are multiple accessory structures up and down the bay on the bay side of lots.
Within the
People-
percentage that they're allowed to do.
Exactly. There's some lots with multiple accessory structures as you come down the hill with integrated staircases and, enclosed buildings, open gazebo type buildings. They're, as long as they're staying under that 25%, it's fine. To not address that, as you said, the perception is that's a front. But what our code said wasn't. And we tried to fix that and omitted something like this that has been happening for years.
Right. And one of the other things, please keep in mind, is I think most of you kind of understand when you get into Montrose and down in Point Clear, the city limits kind of become hopscotch because they're annexed at the request of that individual parcel owner. So you might have 2 or 3 that are in the county and then 1 that's in the city and then 2 or 3 that are back in the county and kind of like that. So this parcel is in the city. There are multiple adjoining parcels within a certain distance on both sides that are actually in Baldwin County and are subject to Baldwin County zoning requirements. So this is kind of a city parcel, and I don't recall if there's anything adjacent to it in the city either way.
On
But
both sides.
on both sides? Okay. So you will see when you start comparing what's up and down the bay, you will have 2 different types of regulations. You will have some county regulations, and then you'll have what falls in the city has to fall under the city regulations. So just kind of understand, it's not apples to apples. You've got apples and oranges kind of intermixed up and down the bay.
So the city ordinances in the county are 2 different.
It is,
sections.
and anything that's in the city comes before our planning and zoning and is subject to city zoning, and then anything else has to go before the Baldwin County planning and zoning. And there are some nuances that are different between the 2 zoning ordinances as far as setbacks and building heights and things like that.
So this structure is not over state waters.
It is not.
It's on land.
It's on land, and it's a heated and cooled enclosed structure, so.
But right now,
Sir,
It's not heated and cooled.
it is not heated and cooled,
No,
okay,
sir.
okay,
It's a screened porch. It's a screened porch. It's screened.
okay,
It's not screened as of yet, but that's what the intent was.
okay.
so where I was going with this. Right now, the building itself is in limbo.
That's correct. Well, this is the first step, is it
Right.
legal per the city's regulations? And if you decide it is, that's fine. And then from that point, we'll come in as the building department and we'll issue permits for it, so we've got a written record of the project. And then we'll start looking at the enforcement of the federal flood regulations and the building codes for structural, plumbing, and electrical that go
Right.
with it.
My other question is, Hunter, if it sounds like the rules need to be changed, and I think everybody's in agreement with that. Just for clarification, if this is, personally, I'm uncomfortable about approving something is a rule, even though, like Eric, he's putting a little bit more clarity on it. There are other structures that are similar, are out there and within this setback or meets these ordinances, but it may not be in the city. My question is, if this is turned down and the planning commission and the city council, whoever changes the zoning, I think both of them have to do it.
Yes, sir.
Can he come back and keep, while it's in limbo, come back and then it won't be a variance, he'd be in accordance with the zoning?
Yes, how long that takes.
Because right now, this
I'm not
thing is
sure.
in limbo.
Yeah. And there, I heard one part there, what we're looking at here is accessory, whether it's we call it a boathouse, a gazebo, a screened-in porch, we're talking about accessory structures.
Right.
And there are many up and down. What's unique about the lots along the bay is some are 75 foot deep and some are 700 feet deep. So some of those accessory structures are hidden, some sit up on the hill behind the house.
Right.
This one happens to be a deep lot with an accessory structure. This is not abnormal of anything that's happened there. And I have to fall on the sword a little bit. When we changed our zone, we tried to fix something that would not require variances from people building a garage on the uphill side, which is also common. Because as you've heard, and I think was said before, people kind of view this as two frontages. That's not what our regulation said, and we tried to clarify and made one correction and omitted something else, so.
Sounded like it wasn't broken, but we fixed it.
Well, it was broken. We tried to fix it and left a little bit hanging to clear up. So we certainly tried, we fixed one problem, but we in an effort of doing so, we left another situation out. And you're right, this could be, if the zoning code amended this to allow accessory structures on bayfront lots in the front yard, then this would not be a variance request, but I'm not sure how long that would take.
So
And a lot
this-
of the concerns are more of a building permitting concern. It's not that the city's not gonna look at that, it's just the way the dominoes fall. You know, if this was permitted, then we would have come to you first for the variance, and then it gets built, and just kind of one domino got put in front of another one without the permit happening, so.
I have another question. What about safety? If this thing's sitting on a beach with the bay right in front of it, and we get a hurricane that blows the water up like it does at the Legion, you know, hell, you can get 15 feet of water. How high is this thing gonna be setting off the ground?
It's out of the floodplain.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's where
It's
we
what?
look at, out of the floodplain.
It's
Yeah.
above the floodplain.
Yeah, we've got, you know, the Federal Emergency Management Agency published flood maps, and they established base flood elevations based on computer modeling, based on past storm events.
Oh, okay.
And they provide an elevation at which that floor has to be to meet what is termed as the 1% chance or the 100-year storm. We may get one that blows it away, but it also wouldn't be unlike piers and boathouses all up the bay. Our biggest thing is to be legal per the federal regulations. It's got to meet that flood elevation, and I believe it does. So as far as that standpoint, they're doing everything that is legally required to elevate the structure to the proper elevation.
Now,
Eric,
one other thing, what happens if there's a fire in this building? Like if there's people that are staying there, like are staying overnight and all that?
Right.
How does our fire department handle something like that?
Well, on something like this, I mean, you know, if it were a residential unit that had full stove, sleeping bedrooms, you know, was considered a habitable building, that would require fire protection measures there. But for something like this that is more gazebo, kind of a get-together area at the end of the pier, we've got thousands of those up and down the bay that are more than 400 feet from a hydrant, so that would not be unusual.
It's no different from.
If it were a residential structure that is actually a contained habitable building that's a residence, that might possibly change that. But, you know, like I said, we've got those everywhere, and especially on a lot like this. I don't know what the footage is, but it's a real deep lot. That's a huge lot, so.
And just to
Yeah.
clarify that in our zoning code is called an accessory dwelling unit, and we
Just-
do not allow those, so we don't.
Right.
We don't allow a full kitchen, bath, and bedroom
Would this meet,
in an accessory.
that was my question.
Sir.
Would this meet a accessory structure?
It doesn't, if it does not have hardwired cooking, for cooking appliances.
Right.
And does not have a full bath interior with the toilet, sink, and shower. The way we differentiate a living area is you can have a half bath with a toilet and a sink, but you cannot have a full bathroom with a shower or a tub. It has to be dependent for it not to be a living area, it has to be dependent on the main structure in some way. We define that by cooking facilities and by bathing facilities. Now, on these things, it's also not unusual to have an outdoor shower out on the patio, because if someone's walking down the beach, they get sand on them, we have those where they have a pull rope and they have a small shower out on the deck. Not an enclosed where you can soap up and take a shower, but it's something that you can rinse the sand off. That's not unusual. We have those all over the place.
Got it.
The depth
Okay.
of the lot is 685 feet. Yeah, and fire trucks carry 1,200,
I guess then it's 700. That ain't bad for a guess.
1,200
The,
foot of hose.
Because I have spent an episode where the bluff caught on fire, people having, doing.
She's gonna have to come to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you want to come to the mic, the people on watching online can't hear. It's okay.
I can already speak to what happens in the fire. Those poor firemen get their cardiovascular workout because when people are burning trash that's come in from the different storms like we even have now, I've had the fire start in front of his place and it ran straight up my bluff and to the next bluff to the south and to the next bluff to the south. So, no, they can't reach it with the hose. They have to come down there with axe and do it manually. So, so you gave the definition of what's considered a habitable building. Okay. Okay.
Accessory dwelling
There you
unit
go.
and
Thank you.
versus accessory structure. I know those are easy to get changed, but that is the difference. So we allow accessory structures, and that can be an enclosed building with half bath. We do not allow accessory dwellings except for very few places in town.
Okay. So if he puts plumbing in there,
Have a half bath, so that's plumbing.
okay.
And
So
have a sink,
how,
so
what, are we
I-
going to let it run off into the bay?
It's going to have a
No.
grinder pump. It's going to have a pump that's going to pump the sewage back up into
Okay.
the main collector.
And then if there's damage, do you make them turn something where you can turn that off?
Well, typically, it's going to have a backflow preventer on it, so that if something happens at the building, there will be a backflow to keep it from siphoning back in, or siphoning.
Okay, because it does, those grinder pumps are small, and when they break down, because his construction people cut my sewer off at the road and caused my grinder pump to burn up, so my sewage was flowing over into my yard. Don't even get me started.
Excuse me, before you leave, when you had this damage to your bluff?
Bluff?
The foliage on it and so on?
It eventually grows back. Everything grows back, right?
Yeah.
And I
Well,
didn't strip my bluff. My bluff is still very natural.
Okay.
It's probably driving them crazy
But
because it's not
if
perfect.
it did damage anything down there, is anything covered down there by insurance, or is
I don't have anything down at the beach. I mean, they're not going to cover a tree, but I don't have a building or structure. So, and I can't. I guess you have to have it. Can you get insurance on a pier?
You can tip, not anything over water,
Okay.
if it's over water.
Okay. So if he has insurance on his house down there.
Oh, yeah, I know on the
But I don't
house.
have anything there now. It wouldn't cover anything for. Now, if it came up to my house, which it was doing,
What
and
I'm
that's
concerned about,
different.
if somebody's down there and there's an accident, could the city get sued?
I have no idea. I'm not an attorney.
Is the question,
Have we
can
ever
the-
had a suit like that? Does anybody know?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
I've had deceased bodies float up too.
Can you close the public hearing?
All right. Thank you.
Anil?
Thank you.
Yes, Kathy?
I have a question.
sure.
What percentage of the construction is completed at this time?
Far as I know, it's done, or
Drive-in.
I'd say real close to done. Just so you know, we run into things fairly often that permits aren't pulled and something is constructed. The first thing we do is determine, is it legal to be there? If it is legal to be there, then we handle the permitting and the inspections to make sure that it meets all of the building code requirements. So this is, not necessarily unusual to have an unpermitted structure. So that's why we're here. First, is the building legal where it is? If it is, then I handle it as an inspection and permitting issue from that point forward. So this is certainly not the only one we've had throughout the city of Fairhope in our jurisdiction that was built before the permit was issued. As long as it's legal and it meets our code requirements, there will be a doubled permit fee as a fine that is assessed, that's in our ordinance. That will be assessed at the time the permit is issued, and then we'll do the inspections and we'll track and close out the project once all of the building inspection issues are corrected.
And that, I think that's a key point, and I thank Eric for being here, because we get a lot more into building permit tonight than usual, and just, we're here for the variance, not for, make sure plumbing is installed correctly. But if it is incorrect, that will be.
I'll handle that.
That will be handled at the permit.
Okay.
So
right.
what, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
was this done at the same time as the house was being renovated when they had a permit for the house?
I believe, and you're going to have to forgive me because I've not been to this house in a little bit. We got a lot of projects going on. I believe the house renovation is still ongoing. You're not done yet. So this was done, the house is still happening.
So, I mean, I guess if the permit, y'all are also in charge of doing the bulkhead. So was this ever looked at?
It was constructed, our guys didn't notice it until, I guess, Mr. Dorgan had mentioned to them, hey, come down and take a look. Because of the distance from the main house, it's just something that was never noticed by the inspectors when they were out there. They were looking at the house and coming and doing the requested inspections on the house renovation at the time. And as soon as it was brought to their attention, it was brought to my attention, and that's what kind of started the process of where we are now.
And as I said, I don't think there was any malice. I mean, I think that would have been the worst case of trying to sneak something in.
Yeah, they wouldn't
To
have
try to
called
do it
us.
right down the
Yeah, I was
middle,
going to say,
like
they
you
wouldn't
have
have
a
called us to
permit,
come look at it
up
if
the
they
hill.
were trying to do that,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that,
All right, I'd like to close the public portion of the meeting, and board members would like to discuss and get a motion, please.
I would like to make a motion to approve this application and to the staff recommendation.
Okay, and we'll take a
I
roll call
second
vote.
it.
Oh, so we have a second, okay.
Second.
Well, Emily, will we do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Dick Schneider,
Yes, approve.
John Avent,
Yay.
Anil Vera,
Yes.
Yes.
Christina Stankowski,
Yes.
Kathy Slagle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other items on the agenda that needs to be discussed?
Yeah, I have one. I don't know the exact meeting we had, but we voted on if a board member is not present for four meetings within 1 year, that they can no longer be on the board because of their absence. And it's pretty important that we have a quorum. So we do have a board member that tonight would be his fourth time missing. So I make a recommendation to dismiss that board member and request that the city council make another appointee to this board.
Do I have a second?
Before
I second it.
we go that far, is there a charter for this particular activity, for this committee?
yes, you
Yes.
have bylaws.
Okay,
Bylaws.
is it in the bylaws?
Yes, you
Yes.
amended that, I
We
think,
amended
last
it.
year.
Oh, we amended
We
it.
amended
Oh,
it. You voted
okay.
to
I
amend.
missed that it
Yeah,
was
I'm sorry.
amended. Okay, I
So we have a second
approve.
from Kathy, so we will take a roll call vote.
Dick Schneider,
Approve.
John Avent,
Yes.
Anil Vera,
Yes.
Christina Stankowski,
Yes.
Kathy Slagle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Is there any other old or new business?
We do have a
Anil,
case for next week.
Neil.
Yes.
Question. I would just like to ask the board members to look around and see if they can come up with any suggestions of people that would be good on the zoning board of appeals. And if so, make the recommendation to Emily or Hunter and see if we couldn't get more people as permanent members and then have some people as alternates in case we need them.
Sure. So the rules they have to live in the city of Fairhope, is that correct?
Yes.
That is
So if
correct.
they're if they're outside the city of Fairhope, it will not work.
Right.
Correct.
In the corporate limits, so not the planning jurisdiction,
Okay.
but actually in the corporate limits of the city of Fairhope.
Okay.
And just for our, since we do have a publicly broadcasted meeting, if anyone is interested, we have an application that can be filled out, and we'll be happy to send that out.
And
So,
it is posted on our website.
yes.
Okay, for applicants
Mhm.
to ask for that.
And the process for that, the city council will select those members, so if we have multiple, that is the process.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Hi.
Thank y'all for coming.
Kathy.